David receives a text asking if he has the goods, and he confirms that he does. He quickly packs his bag and heads out. Along the way, he runs into Ricky, his college friend, and they catch up. David shares some kush with Ricky, who is surprised that he's still dealing but admits he envies David's freedom. Rose, David's neighbor and a dancer at a club, dislikes her job, and they have a strained relationship. Kenny hints at buying drugs, but David refuses to sell to underage customers. Kenny witnesses Casey being harassed by thugs and tries to help, but they both end up in trouble. David intervenes, and in the chaos, Kenny reveals that he's a dealer. The thugs threaten David with a knife, but he manages to escape. However, his flat is ransacked, and everything is stolen. David receives calls from his supplier but hangs up. A black sheep arrives, and David is taken to Brad's estate, where negotiations are expected. Brad mocks David for standing on plastic wrap, claiming it's for a new skylight. David owes Brad $43,000, and Brad offers him a deal. Deliver a small amount of kush from Mexico, and his debt will be cleared, plus he'll receive $100,000. David is hesitant due to the risks involved. Kenny suggests dressing up, but David dismisses the idea. When a family asks for directions, David realizes he needs a family and an RV for cover. He approaches Rose to recruit her as his wife but is turned down. David easily recruits Kenny and suggests Casey as another member. Rose's manager changes club policy, and Rose quits on the spot. David gives money to Kenny and Casey for new clothes. At the airport, they pass security, and Casey looks angelic in her photo. Rose unexpectedly arrives and requests $30,000 to join the mission, which David agrees to. They embark on their journey in their RV. Casey notices a fireworks stand and asks David to stop, but he refuses. Kenny and Rose join in the request, leading David to express frustration, stating they are not a real family. Surprisingly, they smoothly pass through the Mexico border and arrive at a heavily guarded gate. Everyone except David seems unperturbed, raising concerns. David encounters One Eye, the presumed boss, who threatens him with a gun until he mentions Pablo Ciccone, Brad's alias. David claims to be with his family, and One Eye invites them in. They discover it's not just a small amount of kush, but 2 tons. David calls Brad, who is surprised they obtained the goods without explicitly mentioning Pablo Ciccone. A woman offers Kenny fruit, but he declines when One Eye warns him of the consequences. The RV is packed, a spider among the fruits. As they leave the camp, an officer waits for them, knowing they have pot. He accepts a personal bribe since they lack the desired amount of money. David realizes Rose won't comply with the officer's demands. The officer reassures Rose that he prefers men. David confides in Kenny about his intentions and convinces him to satisfy the officer for the sake of the group. They hand the officer $100, thinking he meant dollars instead of pesos. At the border, the Fitzgerald family creates a commotion when they pull up beside them in an RV. The Millers reluctantly welcome the Fitzgeralds after being pressured. Melissa, their daughter, becomes fond of Kenny. During a routine check, a person is caught with a joint. David's sudden braking causes a pot to fall out, which Rose cleverly disguises as a baby. The Fitzgeralds are curious about the baby. They encounter a security guard, who questions them about their belongings from Mexico. A barking dog leads to an inspection, but the presence of hidden immigrants saves them from further scrutiny. The Millers are bewildered by the incident and the potential consequences they face. Despite the tension, they express relief that everything went well and enjoy the moment by turning up the music. Meanwhile, the real owner of the pot, Pablo Ciccone, discovers it is missing and pursues the Millers. Their 15-ton vehicle breaks down on a slope without any signal. Casey and Rose venture out for help and are later offered a ride by the Fitzgeralds, who know a mechanic for their RV. During the ride, Eddie inquires about Rose and David's meeting, and David surprises Rose with a detailed and remarkable recollection of their first encounter. Later, a discovery in the glove box reveals that Don is an off-duty agent, causing the Millers to become nervous and prompting a family meeting. They plan to distance themselves from the Fitzgeralds, but due to a closed repair garage, they are forced to camp out overnight. A conflict arises when Eddie tries to take the baby from Rose, leading to the pod blanket being thrown into the road and run over twice. Casey cleverly diffuses the situation by claiming that the baby was her school project, saving the day. The Millers apologize to the Fitzgeralds for the baby misunderstanding. Later in the evening, they gather around a bonfire, sing songs, and play a drawing game. Melissa's drawing proves challenging to guess, and Kenny's drawing of a skateboard is slightly misleading. Kenny and Melissa have a pleasant conversation, and Melissa leans in for a kiss, but Kenny opts for a hug. David offers Kenny comforting advice. Feeling sympathetic, Casey decides to teach Kenny how to kiss, although she doesn't particularly enjoy it. They continue practicing, and when David and Rose return, Rose joins in and imparts her own kissing techniques. David becomes a spectator. Suddenly, Melissa arrives and is shocked by the situation. Don drives the Millers to the garage for their RV repair, while the Fitzgeralds leave. David goes inside to retrieve his RV but discovers the mechanic tied to a chair. Pablo has found them, and David hands him the phone. Brad, on the other end of the call, becomes frightened and hangs up. Additionally, One Eye makes an appearance. The Millers are tracked down by Pablo through a transmitter in the pot. A heated argument ensues among the group, revealing that they are not a real family. Pablo learns that Rose is a dancer and asks her to perform. Rose begins a provocative routine, earning high praise from David. Kenny struggles to contain his attraction to Rose. Rose distracts Pablo, allowing David to make a failed attempt to incapacitate One Eye. David attempts to resolve the situation peacefully, but fails. Kenny manages to injure One Eye before they all escape in the RV. Kenny, under stress, drives recklessly, causing damage to Pablo's car while being shot at. David tries to take control of the wheel but causes a chaotic scene, including the release of fruits and a spider biting Kenny's leg. The RV veers off the main road, but everyone survives except for Kenny, who is in pain. At the hospital, David contacts Brad, surprising him with his survival. David threatens to betray Brad and give the remaining pot to Pablo. Brad offers David $500,000 as compensation, but only if he delivers the goods by tonight. The doctor suggests Kenny could be released in a few hours, but David insists on getting him out immediately. Despite David's urgency, Rose and Casey decide to stay. Scotty P., a well-mannered young man, arrives to pick up Casey. Rose chats with him and asks about his tattoos, particularly the one on his collarbone reading "No Regrets." Casey leaves with Scotty, while Rose and David bond and share personal details. When Casey returns, they scold her for being gone too long. Finally, they retrieve Kenny and rush him to the RV, but David accidentally drops him while explaining the time-sensitive situation and the high stakes of the job. Rose and Kenny refuse to leave without Casey, leading to an argument. David drives off in anger, leaving them behind. Pablo discovers their location, and Casey reunites with Scotty. David contacts Brad, informing him of his return in a few hours. Casey confides in Scotty about her troubles during the trip, but he's eager to move forward. Rose intervenes. David returns to them, but they are not pleased to see him. They await an apology from David, who initially lets his pride get in the way but eventually begs for their forgiveness. On their way to the RV, the Millers encounter the Fitzgeralds and get into a scuffle over Melissa witnessing their actions the previous night. Kenny, trying to redeem himself, confesses to Melissa that they smuggled pot and are not a real family. As they try to cover up the truth with lies, One Eye approaches them with a gun, but Don intervenes and subdues him. Melissa considers calling the police when Pablo takes her hostage. David hands over the RV keys. David pleads with him to shoot only him, which Pablo refuses. In a moment of distraction caused by fireworks, David manages to disarm Pablo, and Kenny delivers a knockout punch. Kenny and Melissa share a kiss using the technique Rose taught him, while David and Rose also embrace. Donna restrains Pablo and shares a moment with Eddie. The following day, David and his fake family are placed under witness protection for 3 to 6 months. Sometime later, David, now living in the suburbs, waters his plants and introduces his family to the neighbors. They are the Millers, and they have a happy ending. Subscribe for more content.